Don't understand why you're 40 years old and playing this game still. So.
Well, I mean, what game do you think you're going to be playing when you're 40? When do you think you're going to stop
Probably
playing games?
no
What's the age? What's the age? What's the cutoff
When
age?
do I cut? When you're out of high school and college?
You're a high school kid?
Yeah, I'm in high school. Yeah.
How old are you?
Why does it matter?
Well, I mean, you foresee yourself in the future quitting something you love, like video games? Do you not love video games? You just cruising through it.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a waste of time when you're that old. So.
Well, how do you know? You're not old yet. I mean, I can think of probably reasons that video games would be a waste of time for a high school kid, too. Do you have a 4.0? Are you in honor classes to get more than a 4.0?
No, but...
You know what I'm saying? There's more things you could be doing to improve your life than playing video games, too, right?
Yeah, you study and not play games.
Hey, just recreation, man. Having fun. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Alright, then.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Arcade. My name is Brian, and I am here with Tachyon Blue, or can I know that you have your name on your book. I don't know if we can use that. If you're not comfortable with that.
Okay. Tachyon, Kevin.
Yeah, so Kevin, Tachyon Blue, and I wanted to have him on, and he asked to come on, so we kind of on a mutual basis because we are talking about the Kickstarter for the first book in your series, The People of Gamergate. And I'm going to display the Kickstarter page. I have links in the description so you guys can check it out and give him some support. It looks like you're getting very close to accomplishing your goal too. Congratulations on that. Well, first of all, how are you doing?
Well, thank you. I'm doing good. And yeah, we we are getting very close. 88% right now, 11 days to go. I'm pretty confident we're going to get over the finish line. We got 33 backers. If you want to be 34, get us a little bit closer. You know, every little bit helps. The lowest tier is $15 for the digital copy of the book, the first volume. If you want the hardcover, the cheapest you can get is 35. And yeah, by all means, gamergatebook.com, the people of Gamergate. I'll be happy to talk with you, Brian, and your audience, and tell you more about it, tell you more about Gamergate, and talk with you about Gamergate because you were involved as well, I believe, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm an old head. I was there in a way before it started. I was creating content with Honey Badger Radio I started like in 2013, and I think Gamergate like officially sort of kicked into gear around 2014. Is that right? I mean, I assume that you have all
August
of the records.
2014, yeah.
Yes, August of 2014. That's right. And so I guess like first off, I mean, I know that I've had you on before and we talked a little bit about this, but for the people that are watching, a lot of people are getting involved with this stuff and they don't have the background or the history of it. So I guess I want to ask you a couple of questions about your sort of experience or your story with Gamergate. So what motivated you to create this book series?
So yeah, so I was involved with Gamergate. I ran the St. Louis meetups in St. Louis, Missouri. Not that big. We had like eight to 10 people, I think, in total in St. Louis who came to the meetups. And I also was involved with as a YouTuber. I made some videos, some live streams, talking about the topic at the time, and I got involved in.
Were you doing Google Hangouts back then?
Yeah, Google Hangouts on air.
We were all doing Google Hangouts. That was what we were all doing too. That's right. Okay, I'm sorry. You go on. So
I was involved. I mostly hosted the meetups. That was like my main involvement. And I moved on. After around 2018, I felt like the Gamergate stuff was more or less dying down, and so we hosted our last meetup in St. Louis that year. Our last two meetups, I think, actually we did that year, and then I decided to basically leave the internet. And came back last year, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to become a live streamer, completely unrelated to any of the Gamergate stuff. The Gamergate topic came up because, as you know, being a live streamer yourself, a lot of people in this space kind of know a lot about Gamergate, or they think they do at least. They want to argue with you about it. So the topic came up, and I'm like, you know what, I should. So I did it. I did 10 hours of research for this debate that I was planning to do because someone challenged me to a debate because they thought that Gamergate was a misogynistic hate campaign, and I thought they were wrong. So I agreed to the debate. I did like 10 hours of research ahead of time, and I realized, you know what, it's always bothered me that the Gamergate community and movement was misrepresented. And I know the topic.
Uh-oh.
Why don't I decide revisit
to
it? And interview people involved. Well, at first I wanted to do an encyclopedia, but then I switched it to doing this on doing the book of interviews. A book series of interviews, actually.
And so wait, so you decided to do this because of some debates you had after sort of deciding to return to the internet and doing some live streams. Did you want to make live streaming or being a streamer like your job, or was it just kind of like a hobby or thing that you like to do on the side?
It was really just like a thing on the side. Like ideally, at the time, last year, I would have been like, yeah, absolutely. I would love to be a political live streamer full time and be able to just do live streaming for video games, politics, history, whatever interests me at that moment. But like obviously, the vast majority of people can't realistically do that. It's like less than 1% of people probably make it. So it was just sort of like a side fun thing, really. But if it turned into something bigger, that obviously I'd welcome it. But then I decided I want to go this route instead with the project. So I also do live streaming with it. So I live stream the interviews that I do. Most of the 70 plus interviews I've done are available on my YouTube channel, Tachyon Blue. Though some of the interviews, including one in the first volume, are book exclusives. So those won't be online at all.
Were they when you did them, or did you just initially make them private so that they would only be in the book?
So these ones, the book exclusive ones like Wet Sprocket, they are never recorded or aired online. So they weren't live streamed, they weren't ever uploaded or anything like that. They were actually they were done over text actually. So I sent them basically the question list and asked them to fill it out at their convenience, and then they sent me back, a couple months later. Like Hannah, Hannah Wallen, she did a partial. So some of them are hybrids. So like Hannah, she did like a partial voice interview, and then in addition to that, she also did a text portion too. So part of hers is going to be the text questions that she filled out on her own, and part of it's going to be the interview with me.
And so, okay, so like you said that what got you to start this series with the interviews was you didn't like the way that Gamergate as a phenomenon was being represented, right? And you thought it was unfair or misinformation. Okay,
or unfair too, you could say it too.
Yeah. So you were trying to be more fair, and so you basically talked to. How did you determine who was sort of qualified? Because it was really just a hashtag that anybody could use. And so it was hard. It could be, there's definitely some gray area, in terms of who is really part of this and who is just sort of using the hashtag. How did you suss that out? How did you discern the difference?
Well, when I first started, what I did was I looked at the people. I kind of I remember these people from back then, right? And so I reached out to people who I knew from back then, because I knew that obviously they were, quote unquote, a part of it. But I mostly just used self-identification. So if these were people who identified as supporting Gamergate, 10 years ago or 9 years ago, then I would count them as a supporter, basically. Except if they were obviously a troll, or if they've changed their mind since then. Three of the people I've interviewed have changed their mind over the years. Two of them used to be anti-Gamergate, and they switched sides. One became pro, one became neutral. At least they self-identify that way. And then one person who supported Gamergate, 10 years ago, has changed their mind and become anti-Gamergate since. So some people have changed their mind, but I go based off what their 2024 view is. It's Peter Coffin.
Yeah, sure. I remember Peter Coffin. Well, I know he's still around. Yeah.
He changed his. Yeah, he recently came out and talked about how he was wrong about Gamergate. In my interview with him, actually.
Yeah, I saw. I didn't watch the interview, but I saw that you did talk to Peter Coffin. Out of curiosity, we don't have to go deep into that, but I'm wondering if he changed his mind or his position shifted on that. What was his position before? I know he was against Gamergate, but going more in depth, because some people who were against it, maybe they just sort of bought into the way the journalists or the media was representing it, or maybe they had a personal experience with someone online and it colored their view in some way. what was, or they're just responding to what their peers were telling them. You know, like if you were not, let's say you weren't really like engaged, but you were friends with somebody like Randy Harper, and or the people at Crash Override Network or whatever, and they told you this is what they're like, and then you just kind of like say, well, I like you and you're telling me this, so I'm just going to go along with this. What was Peter Coffin's opinions of us, of Gamergate, before, if since you interviewed him, and then in what ways do you think it's changed?
Well, so he used to be. He says that he first found out about Gamergate because people were asking him to condemn Zoe Quinn. I guess this was like right around the beginning of all this started happening, and he says
Yeah.
that he thought he says that when he first found out about it, it was because people were telling him like, "Oh, Zoe Quinn's a bad person. You should distance yourself from her," and stuff like that. And he thought that it sounded like this was like before the word cancel culture was like widely used, but he thought that
Mm-hmm.
basically she was being like criticized by people online unfairly,
They
and just
they
never really
wanted
looked into
him.
it
Yeah,
too
it's like they
much.
wanted him to join in on some kind of dog pile on Zoe Quinn.
That's what he felt like at least. So he thought, oh, it's just a harassment campaign. There's nothing to it. Now, like, I think it's worth keeping in mind though that a lot of these people who are changing their minds recently, like he's changed his mind. Also, so did Graham Lynham. He changed his mind. He just made a whole video. I was wrong about Gamergate. And he says that he spread misinformation about it, and and it was about ethics in game journalism. He says that he promoted this idea out there basically to silence the Gamergate people because his social circle that was like the in thing to do at the time. He basically
Mm-hmm.
admits that Lynham does, but a lot of these people
Mm-hmm.
they're very self-interested in changing their mind. I think they're changing their mind because the woke stuff died. Basically, like the woke ideology is on its way out, and they're jumping ship.
Oh,
But
you
I
mean
think a
like
lot of them.
they're like, wait, like when did the woke die?
I don't think it's not like dead. But I think that the ideology's been on its way out for the past several years now.
Like it's losing popularity or favorability.
Yeah,
Like
and that
then, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not like one thing happened and all of a sudden it was gone. It was, you're saying that
yeah,
it's becoming like less of a prominent
it's becoming
force.
more and more like unpopular. I feel, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
lots
it.
of
Yeah.
yeah, and so because of that, I think some of these people are like abandoning ship. Like Brianna Wu is also doing that as well, though she still clings to the anti-Gamergate stuff. Um,
Oh, she does.
yeah,
Okay. So okay, so you what it's, and I'm, again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. This is why I'm like sort of like trying to like, get a clearer understanding of this. So what you're seem to be suggesting is that these people are altering their positions, not necessarily because they're, like they're just sort of like exposed to new information and it's changing their position, or they're being a little bit more charitable to the people they oppose, but rather because it looks like, what is the Overton window on this stuff has moved and they're just kind of just moving with it. Is that fair?
yeah, yeah, you could probably say that, and like maybe that's not fair. I'm not a mind reader. Like maybe like
Obviously.
you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's all genuine, but I do feel like there probably is a component of that too, especially like when I was talking with Peter Coffin. And like he was a nice guy, completely friendly with me, totally chill. But when I was talking with him, he knew a lot about the events that were happening during Gamergate. That's a problem. When
What
when
do you
your
mean?
position was that like it's a harassment campaign, like he was aware of like SPJ airplay and stuff
Hmm.
like that. So it's like, how can you like be aware of like these events and still? But also too, like a lot of people, um they just like they get like their echo chambers and they get locked into a position and they feel like they have to commit to it. So like maybe he was like at that point, and a lot of those people might have been right where they were just like, you know what, I don't really care about these Gamergate people. Some of them seem like dicks, some of them don't. But you know what, fuck them. Everyone else is saying they're bad. I don't want to be the lone black sheep and stand up for them. I don't know.
Yeah, sure,
It's a lot
sure.
of pressure, but like they also should do the right thing. They made the wrong call 10 years ago.
Hmm. So what were some of the challenges that you faced while you were doing these interviews? And I assume from where did you get like, I assume, trying to get people from both sides of this conversation or whatever it was, this struggle, this, whatever. Was it easier to get like some people more than others, like to talk to them, or did you not have any problems?
So a lot of people were willing to talk, which is great, especially the pro Gamergate side. But the anti Gamergate people, most of them don't talk to me. I've interviewed, I don't know the exact number. It's if you go on the list, just Control F on the Kickstarter page, critic of
Oh yeah,
Gamergate, you'll
yeah.
see the list of people. But yeah, it's like 6 or 8 people maybe or something like that that I've interviewed on the anti Gamergate side. Most of those people, the high profile ones, they don't want to talk. I think
Yeah,
that's because
sure.
they know that their position that they took 10 years ago was inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
And so they feel like they probably can't defend it. I'm assuming because some of these people these anti-Gamergate people, they agreed to be interviewed, but then they backed out of it. Like Ian Miles
Mm-hmm.
Chung and Asia Romano at Vox. She's written tons of articles. She's been trying to like link Gamergate to Trump getting elected, and thinks that Gamergate's responsible for that. So like, she agreed to be interviewed. So did Ian, and then they both backed out um, without really explaining why. And
You
then
know,
another person,
Ian Miles Chong, his position in general has moved dramatically. I'm kind of surprised he
yeah,
wouldn't
he's
talk to
anti-woke
you.
now.
I had
Yeah.
him
Well,
on we had him on our show like years ago. He had appeared on our show a couple times, but now he seems to be more of like a Twitter engagement farmer. Not that that's bad. I mean, I get it. You make money on Twitter if you get enough people engaged with your content. But I don't know. Like his position, he's definitely like seems to be like more de-radicalized than when he was initially involved.
well, I would not. I don't know if you know Brian, but he's actually Malaysian.
I
He's not
do.
an American. Okay, yeah. He at least used to work for RT, Russia Today. I don't know
Oh
if he
yeah.
still does. He hasn't written any articles for them recently, last I saw. So like I would be like a little bit suspicious of him. Just a heads up. That
Well,
might be why he didn't want to do the interview. I don't know.
yeah, that might be. I mean, like I don't know like what without going into too much of a tangent. Russia Today has had like they have paid people to appear on panels and talk about any number of topics. I don't know that that means they're employees. I don't know how that qualifies because
Mhm.
I don't remember. It was like years ago. I remember somebody I know was on was it Daisy Cousins or something? Like she was on Russia Today for some kind of debate or somebody like a Douglas Murray, I think, has been on there, but I don't know if that qualifies as being an employee, right? Even
Yeah,
if
I
they
don't.
pay you. So
Well, what he did was he wrote a bunch of articles for them. They're actually still up. If you
yeah,
go
I
on like
do
RT,
remember.
Email Strong,
Yeah, I do remember that he wrote for them. Yeah, I'm not sticking up for Ian Strong. I'm just asking about that. Okay, so anyway, so you had generally more success with the people who were always pro GG, and less success with the people who were against it. Do you think that it's because like they were afraid you were gonna misrepresent them, or that you were gonna be hostile or something? Or I
for
mean, I
some
know
of
you
them,
can't read
it
their
could.
minds, but
Yeah, for some of them, it could be that. But also too, I think that. I mean, also it could be that they like believe the misinformation and that they like have like a fragile like mindset where like they like think, oh well, I've heard it's a harassment campaign. I was, I called it that at the time or something similar, right? And now this guy's reaching out to me 10 years later. He wants to ask me about it. And he was on the pro Gamergate side, but he says he's trying to be neutral. This guy's probably like a lying piece of shit. I bet he's going to try and railroad me. Like, sure, someone could think that. But they could also, I could also, and it's probably more likely, they don't want to talk to anybody who disagrees with them about this stuff. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure you saw with Airplay, like Koretsky was trying to get anti-Gamergate people, didn't have any luck. He couldn't even get
Hmm.
like a Stephen Totillo or anybody like that to come. And then in addition to that, you also have a bunch of like evidence of things that happening during Gamergate that would indicate that they don't really want to talk, like
Hmm.
censorship of the topic or like the auto blocker on Twitter. Like they don't really want to have a conversation. I think most of them.
Yeah, man. Just a reminder, guys, I'm talking to Kevin McDonald, also known as Tachyon Blue, and he has a Kickstarter, which is almost done for the first in a series of books called The People of Gamergate, where he does a number, like a countless interviews with people that were involved with the whole Gamergate fiasco that started in 2014 officially. So you have this is the first book. Do you remember we talked before and you said you didn't know how many books it was going to be at the time? You were like, maybe one, but I might have to do a series. Do you have like a better idea now of like how big this
unfortunately.
project is going to be? Okay.
Yeah. So 11 to 13 volumes in total, plus the data volume. So
Whoa.
yeah, but I've gotten a lot faster with the process. So I'm almost done with like volume 2. And the Kickstarter, actually, by the way, I should have done it in retrospect, probably just for volume 1, because I noticed that a lot of other Kickstarters that have multi-part series, what they do is they release each volume on there one at a time. But what I did instead, this is my first ever Kickstarter. What I did instead was I did them all at once. So this is actually for the full project.
Oh, so
Not
this
just for the first volume.
Kickstarter is not just for the first volume. It's for
For
the
the
whole
full-
thing.
And you can choose. You can choose if you want volume 1, 1 through 3, 1 through 6, or the full set. You'll have multiple choices.
So when you so the Kickstarter is just so that you can produce it, and of course, people at different levels will probably get
Different, yeah, depending on what they
various
select.
rewards, right? So once it's finished, how you're going to distribute it, like as a paperback, hardcover, digital, and like
So
yeah, go ahead.
3 ways. So there's the Kindle version. There will be a Kindle version that'll be available on Amazon for sale. Then there will also be a digital PDF copy that will be sent to Kickstarter backers. So if you're a Kickstarter backer, you'll get the PDF version of it, unless you select hardcover. There's also a hardcover option. Actually, do you want me to just show you a physical book real quick?
Oh, if you have
grab it.
one, yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Let's take a look.
It's the
so if you
author
guys have
copy.
any questions, send a super chat. I'll be sure to read it, or Rumble rant, and I'll be sure to read it out for you, especially if you want to ask Kevin something. All right.
This was of the rough draft, but the people of Gamer. This is the cover by Kuku Arroyo.
Oh yeah, I know him. He's a friend of the channel.
He's
Very
great.
good artist. Yeah, we used to work together on stuff.
This was a rough. Yeah, this was a rough draft, so there might be a couple like formatting errors that you might see, but this is sort of opens up. You get the featured interviews here, where it'll show the early in the beginning. It'll show you the the name of the people, about me page, table of contents. Beautiful table of contents, massive.
And
then
who are you printing it through? Who do you have as your? Are you doing it
Amazon.
yourself, or Amazon prints the books for you now?
Yeah, KDP. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So there's a Kindle, a hardcover, a digital,
and then digital PDF, but that's only for the Kickstarter. That's if you buy it through there.
Yeah. That's cool. So basically, if somebody buys all of it, it'll be like the Encyclopedia Britannica. You know, we used to get those. Remember when we used to get those as hardcover books?
It will be like that, but also Encyclopedia Britannica, I'm taking them on. And Wikipedia too. So the Gamergate Wikipedia article and Britannica article are both written from a very biased perspective. And so one of the things I'm planning on doing is actually tackling the misinformation, the incorrect information in the articles, the Britannica article and the Wikipedia article, and the Tachyon's takes. Yeah.
Okay. So what are your goals with releasing this? I mean, I think that we have a general sense, but I want you to, in your own words, what are your goals for releasing these books? What do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I guess the ultimate goal is to create like a compendium, or that's I guess like the short term goal is like just create a compendium of information about Gamergate, as told by the people involved, and then also on top of that, the Tachyon's takes, where I do like my in-depth analysis myself of what I found about a specific topic. I just have that information out there as a store of information for anyone who's interested in learning more about it. So it could be educators, academics, journalists, or just anyone who's interested in learning more about it. Could be online content creators who are planning on making a video about the subject, or anything like that. So it's mostly like a resource, really, than like a traditional book where it's like, oh, I can't wait to read this fun, action, thrilling book, right? It's a nonfiction, but it's really for a resource. And I think that ultimately I want to see the narrative on this change, and I want to see hopefully media begin to learn important lessons from Gamergate on all sides, new media and old media, about how we can avoid screwing things up as badly as we did this time around, and hopefully
Mhm.
learn from the mistakes of the past.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a moment in time, so it's not like unless you did one on Gamergate 2, you know, after this blows over. I mean, I don't think this is quite as intense, but there's definitely some a lot going on with it. It's a little bit different this time though.
And I have
So
covered some of that. I wouldn't
yeah.
call it Gamergate 2 because most of the people that have taken the optional survey I sent out don't consider the Gamergate this recent controversies that are happening to be Gamergate 2. At least in the optional survey. Uh,
Mhm.
there are people who do. It's about 30% who do think it is, but the rest don't really use the label. But I have
Yeah.
covered some of this throughout, including when Cabrutus was harassed, as well as like some of the other controversies. Like Cabrutus was involved in the controversy with EE Zhang, where I actually criticized him, and
Yeah.
then some of the other stuff too. We've covered what was it? What Ash Parrish at The Verge? How she came out with talked about how her editor told her not to report on Cabrutus being harassed in her article about the Sweet Baby controversy.
I
Uh,
remember. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
and like different things like that. We've covered some of that, but that happened later in the project, so it wasn't
Mhm.
really a focus because that happened in earlier this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess you like depending on how you define like what Gamergate 1 was about, I could see how people would say this is not related. But I can also see how
Mhm.
people would say this is a sequel or just a continuation. It's almost like, this has ebbs and flows where you get rising events and then there's quiet time and then it rises again. Um, it could be that too. But it depends again, like what you consider that, if it's just about the journalism and the behavior of journalists and the way that they treat customers or visitors on websites or whatever, and they're being unethical, then you could see it as one thing. But if it's more about the broader cultural stuff that's happening, then you might see it as like a continuation. So
Yeah, and
okay.
that's one thing that's worth pointing out. I'm glad you brought that up too. That
Yeah.
different people have different definitions of Gamergate, which is like kind of how this got so messed up, where like
Yep.
nobody could agree on anything. But like so, from my research, I found that there's like about like four major camps, I guess. Or it's not really the best way to put it. So what I did was I've asked people
Concentric
directly or
circles.
indirectly. Yeah, I've asked people directly or indirectly, like what they like to define Gamergate, and I've taken like their answers, whether direct or indirect, and input
Hmm.
them into a form. I can just show you. I can pull up right now exactly what it is, but so there's basically the four main camps are ethics in games journalism, artistic freedom, opposition to censorship, and opposition to SJWs or social justice warriors. Like those, I guess, were like the
Wouldn't
four.
artistic freedom and opposition to censorship be almost the same? I guess
They
if it,
could
if
be, yeah,
they
but
could
it's
be, but it depends on what's being censored,
yeah, like
right?
if you could censor things that aren't art, and then
Yeah,
it wouldn't
yeah,
be, I guess. Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, go
yeah, so
ahead.
like, do you want me to just give you like a quick breakdown? What was
Sure.
Gamergate about? So out of 13 of the interviews I put in so far. Now this isn't the full data set. I'm going to put in like 60 more, or probably like
Hmm.
50 plus more. So for this question, so bear in mind this is just limited data. But out of the 13 people I've asked, 12 of them said it was about games journalism. 6 of
12
them
out of
said it
how
was about
many?
12 out of the 13. So
13. Okay.
92%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 92%. But then, again, this is just early data. And then six of them, 46% say it was about opposing censorship. 5 of them, 38% say it was about artistic freedom, and then 2 of them say it was about opposing social justice warriors, 15%, and 2 of them say it was about standing up for the gamer identity, and that's 15% too. But the rest,
Gamer identity.
few other ones. There's a few other ones too, but they're all one
Yeah.
answer ones. Yeah.
So
So
go ahead.
everyone kind of agrees it's about ethics in games journalism. except for the one person. But a lot of people add other stuff to it too. So like people will say it's about ethics, but it's also about this other stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
opposing censorship, or also about artistic freedom, or also about
Mm-hmm.
opposing SJWs, right? So they'll add
Yeah,
these
yeah,
other
yeah.
things to it.
Yeah. It would be nice to get like another. So I know that we probably wouldn't be able to at this point, but it would be nice to see like a larger sample. But I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, that makes sense
We
because I
will
mean,
have one at the end.
I was there for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we I was there for that. I saw that was the majority of the discussion. Okay, so all the interviews that you've done, do you know what the number is, by the way? How many
I,
in total is
I
this? Do you
don't.
know?
I don't actually
Oh, you
know.
don't?
Well, yeah, no, I actually I had at one point made a list, and then I kept adding people to it, and then like some of the people I had on the list were people who like told me they were going to do it, but then they kind of ghosted me over the years or over the months, and so I took them off the list. But it's over 70 for sure. Over 70 on just the playlist actually, or well, some of those are multi-part ones. So
Uh-huh.
it's about 70 on YouTube, and then there's like 5 to 10 additional ones. But no, I don't know because I'm possibly adding one more person.
Yeah.
Savvy Lizer, she's a YouTuber.
Oh, I know who
Um,
Savvy is. I had her on my
yeah.
show too. Yeah.
Oh, really?
See,
Okay.
wait. Savvy is like, well, I don't know. Maybe we're not talking about the same person, but there is a female game YouTuber named Savvy, Savvy, and she does art and stuff. And I had
No,
her on my
different person.
show. No, different person. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't
this
know who
is Savvy writes
Lizer is.
books. She did a video about Gamergate. She made a 6-hour video about Gamergate. But yeah, I actually went through it. I taken detailed notes about like all the stuff I disagree on, which isn't too much actually. She mostly got it right.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the end, she says that it's still a harassment campaign. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's okay. I mean, I get it. I will like. Well, the thing is, like, when somebody decides that it's a harassment, and it's like you can't really make an argument against it because if they feel like it's, it's like offense. Like if they feel offended, then you can't. It's a very amorphous thing. You can't really criticize or deconstruct. You just have to say, okay, well, I guess that's how you feel. So yeah, I mean, she can land wherever she likes. I can't make her accept anything else because she's decided
Yeah.
that. But okay, so what are some of the most surprising insights you got from the interviews? Was there anything that you learned that surprised you in all the interviews that kind of like maybe even had like was like a revelation?
I guess like the most like groundbreaking thing that I like uncovered, I guess, was this wasn't entirely unknown, but you know Cole Nasrella?
No, I don't. Is that
Okay,
a person?
yeah,
Okay.
she went by Mallory Nasrella back in Gamergate, but she wasn't actually really involved. But she
Mm-hmm.
made a Facebook post in October of 2014 about Zoe Quinn, and about Gamergate, about how Zoe Quinn had harassed her when she was a photographer in 2000, and she worked with Zoe Quinn in 2007, and then had this like photo shoot from hell with Zoe,
Mm-hmm.
where it was a complete disaster. Everything went wrong. And then in 2009, Zoe Quinn actually defamed her character, was spreading all this misinformation about how she had sexually harassed her on a modeling forum that was used by this because she was a model, and then Zoe was a model and Cole was a photographer. She
Yeah.
2 years after they had this photo shoot together, she spread lies about her and defamed her character. A lot of this like same kind of like tactics you saw, I guess, with Gamergate stuff, just lying about stuff for no reason, just crazy shit, and making stuff up.
Yeah.
And so Cole, when she saw Gamergate was happening, she's like, "Well, I've interacted with this person, and she lied about me. So the public should know that she's lied in the past, and she might not be telling the truth about this stuff too." So she made a whole Facebook post about it, but no one really noticed it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found it and I interviewed her, and that was kind of a bombshell story exposing Zoe Quinn as engaging in this horrible harassment against someone who's now a philosophy professor, has no real skin in the Gamergate fight at all. Someone who doesn't really have an incentive here to really lie or be dishonest.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, that's actually really interesting too. I wonder because like I don't think see I'm of the belief that nothing happens in a vacuum. Like people, behavior and the reaction to things around them is like it affects their behavior out in the world, like the way that they maybe even their path, like the way that their life goes. And I'm wondering if this woman is a woman, right? The person you brought
Cole,
up,
yeah, yeah, she's a
Cole.
woman.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, um, so she is a philosophy professor now. So
Yeah.
when did that happen? Like, was this like a recent? Like, was she just going to school 10 years ago when this was
No,
going
no,
on,
she was
or
so this happened in 2007 is when they had a photo shoot together.
okay?
Um, so I kind of glazed over the details, but it's on my
It's okay.
channel. It's Cole Nazarella. She at the time she was an adult photographer, so
I
she
see.
took photos of models for sites and stuff like that, right? And
Yeah.
Zoe was a model who was doing adult modeling. So she was taking photos with her, and Cole actually visited her over a weekend to do this photo shoot. And they didn't have like the venue. Like there was a whole bunch of problems that are relate to that stuff, like kind of
Yeah.
boring
Yeah.
stuff. But like the venue wasn't available, and Quinn had made Cole buy clothes for her with her own personal money because she didn't have any of the clothes that she was supposed to have. This is just a disaster. But then 2 years, and then she also told a bunch of weird stories too. Like Cole was telling about how Zoe was telling her about how she murdered a guy, she killed him, or killed him supposedly in self-defense outside of a pizza restaurant
I
or out of a club.
remember.
I don't
Yeah,
remember the exact details.
I think she may have told. I feel like I've heard her tell that story, or someone else say that she told that story. It could have been Cole. I don't know, but I feel like I heard this anecdote about Zoe Quinn that she gave. This has
Yeah,
nothing to do with Alec Holoka, by the way. This
no, this
is
is
a
completely
separate
separate.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was back in 2007, and then 2 years later, after they hadn't talked for like 2 years, that's when she was posting on the forums,
Hmm.
claiming that Cole had sexually assaulted her or sexually harassed her. I mean,
Yeah.
because she claims that Cole had made her look up a bunch of like pornographic images and stuff, and she didn't want to do it. But Cole says it was all this.
Who wanted to?
Zoe claims, yeah, Zoe claims that Cole was trying to like show her
Oh,
pornographic
I
images
see.
and
I
stuff.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That was like the part of the allegation of harassment.
Yes, that was part of the
Okay.
allegation.
Yeah, yeah.
But Cole completely denies this, and I believe her.
That's kind of wild. Yeah, I bet. I mean, I think that yeah, I would believe her too, or at least I wouldn't call her a liar,
Yeah.
for that. And that yeah, so it is interesting because she was a photographer, and it's like I mean, you never know where you're going to end up, but it is interesting how people's life trajectory changes, and you have to wonder if experiences, like this could affect that, right? Like, I don't know. It's just something I'm thinking about. It's just weird.
It's
So,
all connected.
oh, I mean, I think that in a way, like there is like I mean, I don't know anyone that's smart enough to see the threads, but I think there are like people's paths. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I met my wife through Gamergate at a meetup in Canada, and now we've been together 8 years, and so I didn't think that was going to happen. That was like furthest thing from my mind. It's always what you're not thinking about, and my own beliefs have changed a lot in many ways. So yeah, you just don't know. Okay, so what do you hope people's key takeaways are from the book? This is not quite the same as like what your goal is, but more like what you hope people will take away from your encyclopedia Gamergadia.
So I don't know actually. I guess I do. I guess I want them to take away that Gamergate was a diverse coalition of people from across the political spectrum. It included people like you and me from all walks of life, basically. Um, that it was for most of the people involved, it was about ethics and games journalism, but there were other
Hmm.
factions as well. That there were the the anti-censorship, artistic freedom, and anti-social justice factions as well. And people kind of they came together in part because I guess they had a common enemy. They had these gaming sites that were perceived as being corrupt, that were trying to promote a certain ideological narratives over others and lying to the public in doing so. And that really upset a lot of people. So it brought together a broad coalition. And then I guess as time went on, that coalition fell apart because I guess people have different directions they wanted to take the movement in, or different directions they wanted to take their lives in, and they went their separate ways.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Aside from the fact that like some people on both sides did receive harassment and did engage in harassment, I think that's condemnable. It wasn't a harassment campaign.
No, not at all. I mean, if you have a movement, or I don't even like to say movement, it's like a consumer revolt, let's say, or a conversation about like what's going on and with all of this, this say unscrupulous things happening in the gaming industry. Because like I think you're right. I mean, I think there's definitely like ethical problem, and some of it was maybe the corruption had more to do with people taking advantage of a system so they can make money, because like the games developers and publishers can pay websites for favorable reviews, which is part of the ethical issue. But then you also have people that are like seeing this as an opportunity for, as journalists that want to be writers, because I think a lot of journalists, they get into journalism because they think that gets their foot in the door so that they can write, for bigger publications. Like you're working at IGN, but you want to work at the New York Times. So you start at IGN and you work your way up. And one of the ways you think you can get in is that you write opinion pieces, about games. So not necessarily just like, reviews or what's the thing that people guides, like how to.
Oh yeah, those are big thing now, right?
Yeah, right. Like instead of writing game guides or reviews or tips and tricks or whatever, you're writing opinion pieces, and you went to a university and you got like, fed this these certain beliefs, and you're putting them into what you're writing because you want to get this job at the New York Times. So that you might like, as a journalist, you might say, well, I'm gonna force this into whatever, because I want, like what I'm doing here is not really what I want to do. Like a lot of the people that were, journalists that were against Gamergate or anti-gamer, as it were, because you said that some people were concerned about the gamer identity. The reason was because they felt like the people that were telling them about the products that they're interested in did not themselves like the products, care for the industry, or for the consumer. And I think that there's, at least on some level, a lot of truth to that, because it's essentially conflicting interests, right? Like journalists, and I'm trying to be fair to journalists here. The journalists want to write about the things they want to write about, but sometimes they have to work in, a company that is about something they don't care about, right? And so they end up just saying, well, I guess I'll write about video games. Like, but I really like to write about, I don't know, I'd like to write for Vice, and write about like, or go to be a war correspondent or something, but I have to do this. So I don't know if I'm making
Brian,
sense, but
well, there actually is an example. You may remember this. It was, what was the site? Was it Polygon? That had the rock. It was a Guitar Hero or Rock Band. Oh, it was Rock Band, right? Where the writer said that he'd rather be talking about Filipino politics.
Oh, I do remember something like that. I think it was Rock Band. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, and I mean, like, I'm kind of sympathetic to that. Like, I get it. You didn't want to end up here, but I also believe, and this is where I think the gamers are right. Like, if you're going to write if you have to write about cars, then you have to write about cars, because at the end of the day, there's what you want to do, and then there's the job. And
yes.
That's kind of like where, it unfortunately lands. But the thing is, and this is what I think the reason why the current iteration of Gamergate isn't so much about the journalism, it's more about the ideological issue. But more than that, it's about consumer choice, which is a problem. But today, anybody can start a website, be a journalist. Anybody can do it. Like you don't have to work for Polygon or Kotaku anymore. You can just literally start a Substack or something. And I mean, that means you're throwing a message in a bottle in an ocean of messages in bottles, but it is something you can do. And a lot of people do, So I
Yeah.
guess the
No, I think
landscape is
that's
a bit
great.
different too. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I think
I
it
think
is.
that games journalism, like that's what kind of replaced games journalism. Like obviously there's still Kotaku, there's still IGN, there's still gaming sites. But I think that one thing that's happened is that they've been like in a large part supplanted by new
Yeah,
media, by podcasts and streamers and YouTubers and other content creators, Substack, bloggers, whatever. People who are passionate about a topic and they just ordinary citizens writing about it. Now that's like there's pros and cons to that. Like I think it's great
sure.
that there's a degree of diversity and people can find the content that they want. But I think also too that not all of the, at least in theory, having a structure, like having like a public, a publisher or an editor, a process, a hierarchy, at least theoretically that should allow them to like catch errors and correct for them and have like established policies that that consumers will trust that they will follow in terms of like their ethical reporting and things like that. Whereas like a YouTuber wouldn't necessarily have that. But like they were doing such a bad job in video games at least before that I
Hmm.
don't know that there's really much worse you could possibly get.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, people are just gonna have to exercise their own discernment and try to because yeah, you can't. And even when all of our media was coming from these ivory tower institutions, you also had like tabloids that didn't have anything useful to say, and yet people would get dragged into them. They were essentially the engagement farmers of their time. I mean, they still exist. And then you have like the people who are more credible, and sometimes it just takes over time it develops. But what I am hopeful of is that this decentralization of information will, in most cases, we'll just get to the truth, which is really like all I want, at least when it comes to something objective that can be measured. But when it comes to opinion and, like game reviews and stuff, I mean, people go to YouTube and Twitter or X or whatever, even now to learn, like they get word of mouth from their friends or from people online. They don't go to these gaming websites anymore. That's why if you go to a gaming website, it's chock full of ads because they don't like no one's paying to go to there. They're not, they're basically like struggling. I got a paid comment, so I'm going to read it out. It's a question from Great Indoors for $5. Thank you, Great Indoors. He says, "How do you tie in Gamergate with what has been happening with Hollywood and their apparent fall from grace, so to speak? And do you perhaps see similar trends in other industries, like the music industry, perhaps?" I don't know if
Okay,
that's
so
for. I guess we can both take that.
yeah, you're probably more focused on like the current culture war stuff, I guess, than I am. I don't actually know that much about like the current gaming culture war. Like it wasn't really a primary focus. I was mostly focused on the history. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, but I do know that there have been like some high profile failures, of course, like Concord and Dustborn. Um, and people have speculated that maybe the sales of these games might be because of their perceived political persuasions of the developers or trying to push certain things in the games, certain political messages, like making the characters
Mm-hmm.
supposedly ugly, things like that. Um, as for like if there's like lessons, sorry, if there's like a connection with Hollywood, I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know
Do you
enough
do
about the
you
industry to really say.
do you not watch movies or anything like anything? Or I mean, I know my wife doesn't
Hey,
watch movies.
Alien Romulus. I saw Alien Romulus. It was good.
What did
The
you
new
think
Lord of
about
the
it?
Rings movie. I loved
Which
Romulus.
new? What do you mean? What new Lord of the Rings movie? Oh, you mean the
Yes,
animated one?
yeah, the animated one.
Oh, okay.
That
What did
was
you think about that?
uh, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But I would say this that
Are you a
if
big Tolkien guy? Like, are you like
no
some people they know all the lore and everything? Are
no
you one of
no
those?
I went
No.
with a friend who is, and he was a bit more impressed. But but no, it was obviously like doomed to fail. You could tell that
Mm-hmm.
they put zero effort or care into this whatsoever. In the sense of like there's no money towards it. But I think that like the writer of it, they tried to create like a decent-ish okay story, like nothing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So like the story I guess was okay, and a couple of like the voice actors were like okay. Um, but it was like a solid like 6 out of 10 at best.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Okay.
quite bad.
Yeah. And okay. Well, I'll answer the question. I think that okay. How do you tie in Gamergate with what has been happening with Hollywood? Well, I mean, I think that again, like there's okay. So let's try to look at this through the lens of like how things have gotten to the point where they are now. I think that over time we have there's a number of factors that come into play. So I don't want to say this is the fault of liberalism because I think that's an oversimplification. But what I will say is that I think that like some of the great directors, you mentioned Alien, right? Or Alien Romulus.
Mhm.
Some of my favorite directors in Hollywood made some fantastic films back when I was growing up. Guys like Ridley Scott, who is the guy who gave us Alien and Aliens, or not Aliens, that was James Cameron, but he gave us the Alien franchise, Blade Runner. You got guys like John Carpenter, who was doing The Thing, and all of them were basically putting their belief system, it comes out in their art. Like that's how they express themselves. It's inevitable. And that's one of the things that, liberals have is that they have that creativity and that's what you can enjoy. But I think that what's happened over time is that the quality of writing for film, video games, and television has declined, and movies and music has declined, right? And I know I sound like an old man, on my lawn, but like, if you think about it, like we just did a video earlier today, we were looking at this new hit song, and if somebody was reviewing the song, and I listened to the song it was terrible. And I mean, maybe I just don't have the ear for it, but it was hip hop, and I grew up on hip hop. I'm a huge fan of the Wu-Tang Clan, of the Far Side, of the all these like East Coast and West, but mostly East Coast rappers. And like you could, if you listen to like, Tribe Called Quest or whatever, you can hear in the music how much depth there is, how much care was taken in the lyrics and everything. And today it's just not, it's like music as my example. It's just kind of like it's being produced as content. Like it's this very soulless, hollow corporate thing. And I even hesitate to say corporate, but that is what it is. It's a product of, it's just like, oh, we need more music. Here's some music. But that's only when it comes from these big old, institutions like Hollywood, like the record labels, like the big record labels, like the big AAA studios. They're all falling into this trap where they're throwing lots of money at something, but there's no that hungry spirit that makes things really good that guys like John Carpenter had back in the day. I mean, like The Thing, when it came out, it was a flop, but he kept trying. He did, Big Trouble in Little China, that was a flop. There was They Live, right? And all those are timeless now. Everyone loves them. But he had to stumble and fall before he could get up and run. But today they can spend 200, 400, $500 million on something, whether it's a game like Concord or a film, like, these last few like superhero movies that nobody watched, or a TV show like The Acolyte, and they'll all fail because at the end of the day, they're not doing anything really like innovative. That's why everything is reboots and sequels. And I think ultimately it comes down to there's no like there are no writers. That's it. There are no storytellers. There are CGI creators that can do great things. There are producers. There's guys that are good with cameras, but no one's writing anything. And when they do, they just adapt something else. They do a remake. They do a sequel. And yeah, I mean that's just kind of, and that's the same thing with gaming, which is why I think the indie and AA industries in gaming are on the rise, because they're the people who are working on that. First of all, the bar for entry to make new games is lower than it has been ever. And this also applies to music and television and film. A lot of people are doing great things on their own. So like when I say we are the media, I don't just mean journalism. I mean everything. Like people are making their own comic books. They're making their own everything. And I don't think the mainstream industries can keep up. So I think it's related in that way. And I do think that, like the ideological stuff, it's a crutch. You lean on the crutch. You say, well, I'm doing this because of feminism and you should watch it. Otherwise you hate women. And people aren't buying it anymore. They're just like, nah, that's okay. I'm just going to do this other thing. And they'll just cry about it,
Yeah,
That's what I think.
the ideological stuff, Brian. I think there is like a problem with ideological capture. Like that's separate from like why the games are bad, or like it could be separate. It not necessarily is, right? There could be like multiple factors, but like I don't know how you fix. I don't know how you solve the problem of ideological capture.
Yeah, you just
Like when it
have
comes
to.
to like academia, or when it comes to like a
Right.
media for games.
Well, I think they're when it comes to academia, I mean, okay, so I'll ask you this. How much do you think in this day and age when we have like the digital world being what it is, how much real value do you think a college education is for the average person compared to like the debt that they're going to accrue?
I don't know the exact stats on it, but probably pretty good actually. I think that college educated people. It depends on what degree you go for, but I think they generally get make more money than people who don't go to college.
What if you what if you go to college and you
I bet
psychology has some value? But go ahead.
Well, I think that I mean, like I'm sure there are degrees that are actually like quite terrible, don't teach any money at all. But I do think that across the board, almost having a degree is like significantly better than not. There might be like weird exceptions, like weird like degrees that have no use.
Yeah,
but like
well, there are definitely degrees that don't have any use. But like, okay, let me put this another way. I do think that college is good for certain disciplines. I don't know if, because I know that like when it comes to people who hire, like companies that hire, they're going to say we want a degree in this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get like that's going to be like that you have to have that to get the job. Because I've gotten jobs that I didn't have the certification for, but because I had experience or because they liked me or whatever, I did well in the interview, I did get the job. And what I'm thinking is that there's like a gap between someone's degree and the actual like function in the real world, but then there's also the possibility that the majority of people, or at least like a significant number of people, would probably be able to get a decent job without a college education if firstly the education system in general was better, so that because like I think that the standards have gone way down. For example, if you look at tests from like the 1800s, they were far more advanced than tests today. And I think a lot of that there's a number of reasons for that, but I also don't think that everyone is cut out to be an engineer or a computer science guy, or like whatever, and a physicist. I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to do something not like manual labor per se, but like something like in the middle, like maybe they start their own little business, maybe they have a little restaurant, maybe they have like their own little small business. And I don't know that you need I think that we've put too much stock in like these high status jobs, and then the kind of career, or I'm sorry, the education that comes with that. But that's just in, like you talking about ideological capture, that's just in academia.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like how it is in the world, like products and our culture and everything, I think that that's going to correct itself. People are just going to support what they believe in, and of course, because it's their money, they have the right. Some of the people who are sort of activists playing as content creators, I guess you could put, they're going to insist that you buy their product, but we still live in a system where people can choose how to spend their money. So that's probably, I think it's just going to correct itself. I think that, and I mean, like, if they're like, for example, there's like a big failure of a game called Dustborn. I think you mentioned Dustborn.
Yeah, I'm actually probably gonna play it for one of the
Yeah.
Tachyon's takes when I cover cultural
Okay.
conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's a gigantic failure, but I don't really want it to fail purely because I disagree with the politics of the game. I think that the modern audience, as they call it, if it's out there, they should support it. So I'm not against it existing, is what I'm saying, right? I'm very, very much not for censorship at all. But I do think the market will speak. And so, like, you can't create markets per se, you can only respond to them. But if you're sure that there is a market for a game like Dustborn or Unknown Nine or Zao, I think it was called, then yeah, put your game out there and then people might buy it. I mean, there's lots and lots of people who are making little projects on Steam that don't see the light of day. And some of them are probably really great. Some of them are hidden gems, right? So I don't have a problem with it existing.
So
Um,
you, we're talking about the education, and
yeah.
you mentioned humanities. Actually, I wanted to recircle back to this. I think that there is value in humanities. I think you probably agree too. I think right, like that. We
It
probably do
depends
want
on
some
how it's
people.
applied, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, we I personally would probably like think that there's value in having like a universities dedicated teams of researchers basically who are also teaching the next generation too, but like having them teach people about like philosophy or religion or the classics or like different or works of art, right? Having them like study those. I think there's probably value in that.
Yeah.
But I think also too, like you mentioned, we were talking about, I want to link you this article. I actually
Are
haven't
you gonna
finished
send
reading
it
it
to
yet.
me?
It's from The Elite
Could
Overproduction
you
Hypothesis by
could
Noah
you
Smith.
send it through Discord or because I don't
I
have my Twitter open
Yeah,
or
I'll send it through Discord.
okay. What is it?
But
The
it
elite
looks
what?
like The Elite Overproduction Hypothesis. I've not finished reading the article yet. I was just reading it like 2 days
Oh,
ago.
okay.
So it looks like in the 2000s, if this is right, that there was a huge boom of people going for humanities degrees, more
Mm-hmm.
so than there were careers available. But it
Mm-hmm.
looks like over the past decade, since about 2010 onward, that it's actually gone down. It looks like that. I'm not sure what impacts this will have, but like it looks like people have sort of caught on that like if I get a degree in religion, I'm probably not going to be like super successful in life compared to like if I got a degree as an engineer.
Well, yeah, like well, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, if because the thing is, I think that there could be a value university, but we do live in a time now where you can like, if you know where to look, you can pick up all kinds of skills online. And I think that universities are moving digital. There's been like a few like online only universities out there. But I think that where you run into problems is that there is like an ideological capture of universities in the education system. And it's like, how do you shake that? No, the only thing we can ask is that, firstly, universities should examine their curriculums and structures to make sure that what they are teaching is something people can use, because if you let like an 18-year-old decide, they're just going to pick whatever dream job and they're going to say, oh, I always wanted to be a zookeeper, and they're going to go into that, and then they might lose interest like
Right.
halfway through.
Yeah. No, I get it. But man, at the same time, like I was that kid who
Yeah, me
who
too.
I wish I went for the dream job though, but I didn't. I'm like I wanted to go for political science.
Yeah.
I wish I would have done it. Now maybe I would have completely flamed out. But like I think it would have been like my life. It could have worked out if I could have managed to work hard enough. I could have made it work. I think. But like I
Hmm.
think encouraging people to pursue their dreams is important. But also because like you don't want to like teach kids like, oh no, you're not going to do anything in life. Just go be a lumberjack. Like, are you just
Yeah.
if they want to start a business, if they want to like, I don't know about being an astronaut, but like if they want to like do, I think encouraging them realistically is probably like the best course. Like, and also like if they express that interest and they have to work hard for it, like that's a conversation. Obviously people are gonna raise their kids differently. Like if I had kids, I'd probably like want to have those conversations with them, like when they were younger, like in middle school or high
Yeah.
school, so that we can like get on a path. Like if they're like, oh yeah, you say you want to be a fighter pilot, well, like that's gonna require like all these different skills that we're gonna start working on right now. Then if that's gonna be the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, like, I think that I guess my thing is that there are, I think, there are very driven people who will actually accomplish these things. And I think a lot of people, maybe the majority of people, will not necessarily like fail, but they might decide, that they wish they had done something more humble, or what, like I said, start a small business or something like that. Because like the average, and you can be, and that's another thing too, is that a lot of people are pushed into careers because they're told that, oh, it's going to make you so much money, and maybe that takes them off of their dreams. But this is the thing, like, I think we have an issue with, firstly, for-profit colleges, which, they're incentivized to sell you on going to school, their school, and they will put you in debt to get you in. And if you're young and naive and you don't have like somebody telling you don't do it, you might end up, putting yourself 6 figures, 5 or 6 figures in debt. And I know that's real because it happened to me when I went to art school. I really wanted to do art, and I do art still, but at the time I thought I had to go to school to learn to be good so I can do art. And the person I saw there, their job was to make me sign up. I didn't know that, and I was there with my mother. I was like 18 years old, and they looked at my portfolio, and it was garbage. Like, I had shitty drawings that I just had like grabbed, and I think I drew one thing just before I came in. And of course, the guy was super impressed. He was like, "Oh my God, you're so amazing." And my mom was like so gassed up, right? And so they got me to go, and they used the few people who did go to that school and become successful as the bait. So they said, "Oh, the guy who painted the Coca-Cola Santa Claus? Yeah, he went to our school." And I was like, "What? The Santa Claus on the Coca-Cola bottles?" Yes, and that's true. He did. And there was like the two men, because I was from Chicago, Tobias and Boone. They were these two guys that created Mortal Kombat. They went to my school, the one that I went to, and there was a very famous comic book artist named Alex Ross who does these like hyper realistic watercolor paintings for comic book covers. So I got sold. I went to the school. I finished it. And I didn't even feel I was that much better at drawing, and I didn't get a job in the industry. And most people didn't, and I owed them like 80 grand. I finally paid it off, but my point is that some people did go on. By the way, Kanye West went to that school, and then later he dropped out, and then he went to Columbia and became a musician. But he was going for art at the time. I think he went when I was going, but he was nobody at the time. So, but I guess what I'm saying is that we need to prepare students realistically so that the ones that have that fire, that are going to like see this to the end, have like a clear path. But the ones who, who don't, maybe high school's enough. And that means that we got to make education before college a lot more substantial, right? Because it isn't. Like, I learned algebra when I was in 6th grade. And by the time I was in high school students were already behind on algebra. They didn't know anything about it. And when I went to college, and I was doing like trigonometry, the kids there were just like completely lost. And I was like, what? And so I could see like the degeneration in education. But I feel like we're getting on like a massive tangent.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's fine.
I'm
It's cool.
sorry.
We go wherever
I
we want
just
to go.
wanted to say, like, I want people to be successful, but I also want people to think realistically. And I also think that the landscape of, the potential to learn and grow is so much more profound now. It's not limited to these like, brick and mortar institutions. So, all right.
No, I think
oh yeah, go ahead.
I'll say real quick, the internet is incredible and amazing. I do still think there is a value in the institutions. And I hope that they are able to rise to the challenges of the 21st century. But we also have the internet too. I think that they're going to have to work hand in hand. They're both going to exist.
I think there's going to be changes. I think that, and students, young people who are out of college now are extremely resentful towards colleges for not properly preparing them for the real world. So that you can find lots of people on TikTok, especially women, very upset about what happened to them in college. Okay, so Master Goa, thank you, Master Goa, sent us a super chat and says, in his opinion, GG never died. Feminists infiltrated while we slept because our big names chased other audience after normies got burnt out hearing about SJWs. They believe GG elected Trump, so own it. Take the win. Some of that's a little hard to make out, but thank you, Master Go. I don't know if you want to say anything to that.
According to Chris Ferguson and Brad Glasgow's survey, it was Gamergate was actually more liberal than the median American back in 2015, 2016, and then also too, my own studies, except for on the question of affirmative action, they were more liberal on everything except for affirmative action. They didn't ask people how they voted though. Now I did ask people how they voted, and it looks like it's about a third, a third, a third. So there's about a third of the people going for Trump, about a third of the people going for whoever the Democrat was changed in the 3 years.
Right.
And then a third of it were either not voting, going third party, or not undecided at the time of the survey for the third option for 2024. But that's only of the Americans, because according to Chris and Brad's survey, about 45% of Gamergate people were not American. But if you're a Trump supporter and you want to troll your friends by telling them, I mean, I'm not a Trump supporter. I troll my friends in real life by telling them that Gamergate elected Trump. But obviously, I don't like tell that to people seriously.
Yeah, you troll them.
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. Master Goa gives another $10 and says GG is a better place now because the corpos that allied with feminism, the core of leftism, are dying. So now it's hard for the leftists to deny the industrial damage they have done now that it's obvious. Thank you, Master Goa. Appreciate that. I don't know what you mean by the corpos. That sounds like cyberpunk talk. Is it Arasaka or? But thank you for the super chat. Regardless. Okay, we've been going for a little over an hour now. I want to make sure I've asked every question about that. Well, let's ask you this. Okay, this is okay. Do you think that? I think it's kind of dovetailing into what we were talking about before. Do you think that this project could have potentially influence on games journalism going forward, or maybe just journalism in general?
Maybe. I hope so. But games journalism, I don't. There's one of the games journalist recently came out. I remember who it was. I don't recall, but I remember seeing this on social media. One of the games journalists who's still working in the industry said that games journalism is about 40 people now.
Yeah.
That may have been a little bit of an exaggeration, but
overstatement.
Not too much
of
one. Maybe not too much of one. So I don't know about games journalism. I do hope it changes journalism. I do hope that I think that the historical record on this needs to be corrected because one, it wasn't true, and then two, if people start forming their views of the world based on like the misinformation, like they're probably going to get like bad conclusions. Like if you're trying to run a political campaign and like your takeaway is that Gamergate is responsible for Trump getting elected and for Brexit succeeding and like all of this stuff, you're like, what? And you base your campaign or base your information or your analysis on that misinformation, you're going to have a really bad time because I don't think that's going to be a winning strategy for you. But also, I don't think that's like good for like our history books, 50 years from now to be like, and then Gamergate came and they harassed women and plunged our country into fascism and all this. It's like, well, hang on, what the fuck is going on here? Like, this is some insane shit. Let's dial it back and let's do some research on this. So I hope it changes it because otherwise we're gonna have some like really weird results where there's like a fake history that's being promoted for who knows how long. But I don't know if I'll succeed or not. We'll see. I mean, it's a tall order. But one thing I'm trying in 2024 and late 2024 and early 2025 with the last few interviews is I'm trying to tackle the media directly. So part of that's going to be the Tachyon's takes, where I'm taking a take on the media coverage of Gamergate, but also too, I've already started this with Chris Ferguson. Do you know Chris Ferguson, the Stetson researcher?
I know. Yeah, I know. I've never talked to him or met him, but I know who of Chris Ferguson.
Okay. So in part 6 of my interview with him, because we're crazy people who don't know when to hang it up. In part 6, we we went through the entire New York Times four-part series on Gamergate. Other thing is Gamergate. We went through all 4 of the articles and debunked like the crazy shit they were saying.
Yeah.
And the Washington Post, we went after them. We also criticized the Free Press because Barry Weiss had interviewed Brianna Wu.
Oh my
And
God, Barry
yeah,
Weiss.
yeah, Barry Weiss was promoting misinformation, unfortunately. Um, and so we were criticizing her as well. And next up, in part 7 with Chris, we plan on going after ABC News, NBC, and UN Dispatch, which is like this small publication that writes about the United Nations. They also spread misinformation about it. So yeah, we're going to target them directly, which means that I'm going to be not only talking about it with him, but when I eventually transcribe Chris's interview into book format, that means that video segments are going to be coming out that are going to be directly criticizing and calling out on video me and a university professor who's one of the top researchers in the area of gaming, games research, and Gamergate specifically, having to publish a study on it, are going to be criticizing all these different publications. We also plan on doing. These aren't promises, but because I could change the plan. But we also plan on taking on a lot of other misinformation too, including the Britannica, the Wikipedia article. Those are going to be for Takyon's take. But we're also possibly going to be tackling NPR, CNN, the BBC, the CBC. I plan on going as in depth as detailed as possible in trying to tackle this misinformation. Now, maybe we get 2 or 3 of these places to issue corrections or revisit the topic, or maybe 0 of them do. So maybe we'll see some luck. Maybe not. Just depends.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more questions and then we're done. Question number 1. Which interview was, in your opinion, your best get? Like, wow, I managed to get this person. What's your best get?
That's a good question. I know Kraut was a big one because it's Kraut.
T?
Yeah, Kraut and T.
Okay.
But
I know.
but
I actually am still friends with Kraut and T on Discord. I don't talk to him much, but yeah. Okay.
but
Go on.
but because now he's like a 600,000 subscriber YouTuber now who's like
Oh
in a
yeah.
completely different area, doesn't talk about video games at all hardly. So it was like a really unexpected interview. Peter
Yeah.
Coffin too, because he switched. Because I emailed him not knowing he changed his mind.
Yeah.
And then he replies and he's like, "Oh yeah, I identify as neutral now." And I'm like, or what's he identify as neutral for? And I'm
Tell
like,
my wife
sure.
I said hello.
Yeah. And then, but I guess the one that was the most unusual to get, biggest get, I guess, is Paul Johnson and Stephen Mallory. They're running that Alt F4 conference that happened earlier this year, supposedly about Gamergate. Though I don't think they actually talked about Gamergate too much at all, because it sounds like they were just kind of using the name for marketing.
Oh, I see.
But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, more
Oh.
yeah, but it. I am so shocked. I worked so hard to get them to be interviewed. And they actually did it. I'm really surprised because they were like, you just go on their conference's website.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very social justice oriented, the language,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually agreed to be interviewed, which I was shocked by. But I think that was
that is
a good get.
shocking.
I think it was an important document that there's people
Yeah.
out there trying to host a conference on this in the year 2024, and here's what they think it is, and the reader can determine for themselves if they think that's good or not.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, generally I think to get the opposition, or at least like people who might suspect you of being like hostile towards them, and yet they choose to do it anyway, is definitely a good get.
I wanted to change their mind though. I wanted them to change their
Yeah.
conference and add diversity, but they didn't do it.
Yeah. You also got Christina Hoff Summers, right?
Yeah,
I don't know why,
and
but I would
Kathy
consider
Young.
that to be a good. Yeah, and Kathy Young. I would assume those are good gets too.
Yeah.
So okay,
Kukurio.
Yeah, Kukurio. Yeah. All right. So last question. In the last 10 years since, or at least maybe since the end of Gamergate when you left, I guess this might not be easy for you to answer because you said that you kind of like walked away from this for a while and then came back. But what do you think? In what way do you think you've changed, if at all?
Well, one thing that's like a big change in my personal life is that I've I'm honest now, or I try to be honest. Um, I
Okay.
a few years ago I read a book. You know Sam Harris? Know of him at
Oh yeah,
least.
sure. Sam Harris. Yeah.
So his book Lying.
Uh huh.
I read his book and I didn't even read it actually. I want to tell you the truth. I listened
Huh.
to like a bootleg pirated copy of it,
Oh,
audiobook on
okay.
YouTube.
All right.
But
Yeah.
he doesn't care. He's of the view more or less that that people can, he lets people pay what they want for access to his
Mm-hmm.
content. So he's like, I don't think he'd really care. But anyway, so I listened to this pirated audio version of his book Lying, and I found it really convincing and interesting. And so I decided to try always being honest at all times. And sometimes that means just telling people that I don't want to tell you, because the
Mm-hmm.
truth is you don't want to tell someone something. But yeah, I try to lie. I just always try to tell the truth, which is a weird, interesting thing that's taken me in odd directions in life.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I bet.
it's a weird. It ended up with some weird interactions, including some strained interactions at a couple moments with real life
Mm-hmm.
relationships. But I think for the most part, it's been like a better way to live.
I I can't say I disagree. I think that's great. All right. Well, I'm gonna end the show there. Well, I mean, is there anything else you wanted to say before we close it out?
Yeah,
I'll
thank you
just
so much.
show the Kickstarter again to people of Gamergate. I put a link in the description. Go support the book. They're very close now. They're very close. You're at 5,316. I refreshed to see if maybe there were some changes. That's how you do it, right?
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
see. Yeah, it's still at that, but we're close. So if you can, make it happen. Check it out. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me on. Thank you for shouting out the Kickstarter, and thanks for having me. Thank you for watching, everyone. Like, comment, and subscribe on both of our channels. By the way, regardless of where you're watching, of course.
please do.
And yeah, and please back the Kickstarter. It's GamergateBook.com, or the people of Gamergate on Kickstarter. We're almost there. We're 88%, so I can't do it without you. I really hope you can help me make this a reality. And
Yeah,
thanks again for
11
having me
days
on.
to go. Yeah. Yeah, let's get them over the finish line, guys. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Like he said, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And we'll talk to you guys in the next video. Long live Vivian.
With the glass ceiling broken, all the oppressed groups shall prosper, especially the most oppressed group of all, gamers.
I want people in the industry to be a little bit louder about people being mean to other people, and maybe say it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe say we don't want you around if you're going to be a cunt
Yeah.
and hateful, and that the games industry is diverse naturally. Not because anyone's making them be diverse, because the world is diverse, you stupid motherfucker. And if you have a problem with that, come fight me. Physically. Bitch.
Has anyone taken you up on that yet?
No, because they're all pussies.
Yep.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.